We look at Frank Edwards. We look at Waverly Gervin. I mean, there is really such an immense list of people. Professor McDonald, who went before the Subspace Committee in '68. If people really would have an idea at the plethora of information and the immense amount of so-called names that have come out in support of the release of this information, they would be truly astounded. And I believe that it's very important to remind people of the rich and very real history that is associated to this subject, and we have gone off in some very convoluted tangents.
How about a straight-on question, Glenn? Why do you believe, and obviously you believe, that our government has absolute knowledge of what's on the moon? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. What motivation does our government have, in your opinion, for not telling us?
Well, it's difficult to put yourself inside the heads of somebody else. Let's put it this way. Certain policies are initiated, and they are continued just as a matter of fact.
Okay, that just tells me about the ever-continuing cover-up.
That's true.
What I want to know from you is why you think. In other words, would knowledge of extraterrestrial presence as close as the moon be too much of a social disruption? Would it disrupt our churches, our faith, our very basis for everyday living? Is that it?
Well, it would be if we wanted to remain closed-minded. It depends on the type of expression that we wanted to foster as far as ourselves as individuals and as a people. I don't believe it would necessarily have to do that, but it depends on how closely we wanted to hold on to old beliefs. Remember, they burned Bruno at the stake for his beliefs. We believed the earth was flat for a long time. We have come up with some peculiar habits and some peculiar ways of persecuting those who come to enlighten us a little bit, and it's not necessarily a very pleasant deal.
Yes, that, well, of course, brings up another topic, and that is whether you think that this extraterrestrial presence is benign, or you think there's a really good chance that it is very ominous and very evil by our standards?
From the information that I have been able to be exposed to, and I look at this from several different angles. Historically, when we look at the type of contacts that were reported in historical records, whether we go back into the Middle Ages, back into biblical times, or as far back as the early 1950s, we're looking at the type of interactions where it's reported there is a non-hostile, beneficial interaction, provided, of course, that we wish it as well. So in other words, nobody is taken against their will or done terrible things to. And I find it very interesting, and so did Major Kehoe in his book Aliens from Space, that in 1961 the whole direction of this very real subject went off to the scare tactic. And I believe there are specific reasons for that, and I believe to a great extent that is generated here.
So then
not anywhere
you're telling me the negative stories, and I've heard many of them, I've interviewed people, the negative abduction stories you don't buy.
Let's say that I look at them with the same critical and skeptical eye that you have.
Fair enough, I guess.
I'm not saying that, let's put it this way. We experiment with all types of different research and development equipment here. We ultra-high frequency, low frequency, microwaves, the list can go on. And a lot of these have psychological repercussions.
Richard C. Hoagland made some remarkable claims about glass structures on the moon, crystalline glass structures. I've heard that from any number of guests. Gigantic things, just monstrous things, actually going very high above the surface of the moon. Do you give credence to that?
There have been reports, and it has been done by astronomers and both amateur and professional ones with different types of equipment in different locations so that you get a varying angle so that you start to eliminate haze factors and triangulation and things like that. And there is an area that has been reported. I myself have not seen that. A large Van de Graaff-type structure that stands, and based upon the measurements of its shadow, they're talking about it perhaps 5,000 feet high.
Yes.
I know I discussed this with John Lear, and I consider John a friend, even though we agree on some things, we disagree on others, but we share the same desire for the truth. And we served together flying airplanes, so we have talked about this subject.
No
as
kidding.
well.
You served with John, huh?
Yes, we have.
John, as you know, is quite a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever have the opportunity, just offhand remark here, to hear the program I did with John in which he did what I called the Lear test?
No.
Oh, too bad.
No, but I've talked to him recently, and we're planning to get together in his neck of the woods. So
well, when you see him, be sure you take the Lear test.
All right.
I did, and it's worth doing, Glenn. Believe me, it's worth doing. He's quite a guy, and I know that he has a lot of beliefs about the moon.
Yes.
Some of which even extend, Glenn, into its being a relay station. Brace yourself for souls.
Well, there can be all kinds of speculation. I, at this stage of the game, have dealt with the NASA photographs that my father collected due to his association when he went to lecture before 22 scientists at Goddard Space Flight Center at 67. Actually, it was an invitation along with the Pentagon as well thereafter. And I've seen the microfiche and the volumes of photographs where you go through and then you order the photographs and they come in 8 by 10s or 20 by 15s, and then you go through them, high-quality pictures, and then you can start to pick out things like clouds and formations and areas that appear to be under construction. And so there's a great deal of information, and I don't believe the government hides that from us. It just requires a curiosity factor and a diligence on our part to go and look for it.
All right. Now, listen to me, folks. We've put some photographs. Glenn has put some photographs up on the coasttocoastam.com website. Now, Glenn, what I want you to do is knock my socks off. And I want to invite the audience to go up and take a look at these photographs as well. And if I can see anything like you have described that people have seen, or even anything that I can truly regard as artificial, then I'm going to be with you, Glenn. Let's go through them and see what we've got, okay?
All right, very good. Now, I'm reminding that these are just some of them that we had available in the computer. There are literally hundreds of more that are, I would say, higher quality. But let's take a look at what we've got here.
These look pretty good, especially this first one. It looks like, to me, a really barren moonscape. So tell me what I'm looking at.
Are you looking at the one here, the Apollo 12 from the dark side of the moon?
Let's see.
You see a large luminescent
Apollo
object?
12, dark side of the moon, large luminescent object lighting huge area of lunar surface.
Yeah.
Now, that appears to be, well, okay, I see it. Something very, very bright is reflecting from the moon's surface. There's no question about it. But now, this is photography, right?
That's correct.
So what do you maintain this is we're seeing?
Well, this is the question, and this is the reason the book exists, and this is to create an open dialogue about what we have theorized about and what we have perpetuated over decades and what tends to exist or question those things.
So what do you think it is?
This here on the dark side of the moon, on this particular orbit, it was during the time when the sun's in the opposite direction. So you see down here on the surface, normally if this photograph would be taken on the dark side with nothing luminescent on the surface, and of course you'd have a black photo.
Right.
And barely be able to see any of the topography or geology involved.
Looks like they dropped a flare.
Yeah, well, a flare that would illuminate, well, shall we say conservatively perhaps 25 square miles would be quite a flare. So we're looking at a shot that's taken, this is a Hasselblad picture, so it's a high-quality, high-definition picture.
It is, indeed.
Of a large, illuminated area on the dark side of the moon. And that, of course, brings into question,